What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the spread, NESN.com's football picks podcast. I am NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined as always by my two sports betting compatriots, if you will.
Not friends, huh?
No. This is
not a relationship.
This is purely business.
Yeah. I've only known you for 7 years.
Acquaintances, maybe. I'm Mike Cole, as mentioned, here with Ricky Doyle on my right, Andre Khatchaturian on my left. That the directional information means nothing to anyone listening.
Should we identify
our voices? Identify our voices.
Because I know this is Andre's favorite game.
I'm Andre Khatchaturian and Ricky Doyle.
That's me. That's me.
Okay, and Mike?
Yes, I've already spoken. Okay. Yeah, and
Just making sure.
I identified
Cat's already out of that bag.
Okay.
As always, we'll go through the three best, biggest, whatever adjective you want to use, NFL games. We'll make our picks against the spread, hence the name The Spread. We'll also give you a little picks, upsets action, and we'll get out of here. Before we get into this week's action, let's look back at how we did last week. Andre.
Last week was a good week for both you and me, Mike. We both finished 9-6. And Ricky, I don't know what happened to you. You went 5-10, but
that's what happened to him. You went 5-10.
You know, water found its level.
But week one, you were very strong. You went 11-4-1. So because of that, our results after 2 weeks, somehow I'm in first place with an 18-12-1 record.
Humble brag.
Ricky and Mike, you guys are 16-14.
Somehow I am.
I've never done this well at the start of the season. Usually I'm very bad, so I'm allowed to give a humble brag.
Everybody over 500 though. Huh?
Yeah, we're getting the hang of this.
I actually was thinking about that earlier.
Because it gets easier.
When I was doing my research. No, it doesn't. It doesn't get easier. But at least I've
got.
You
just have to overthink things.
I feel like just the exposure. Like I think back to like 5 years ago when we were doing, you and I were doing this, the audio podcast.
Yeah.
And doing the picks.
We had microphones setting on
fire.
Yeah,
and literally like fire burning microphones. And just like the stuff that you kind of look at back then, I shudder to go back and think about what I said back then. It must have been the dumbest.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're making smarter decisions.
Yes, exactly.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of picked every game,
right.
too. We did every game.
Yeah.
And we would kind of fly through them, and then at the end we would talk about God knows what.
Yeah,
I just remember ranting about this guy who jumped from outer space. And that was like the biggest rant that I had.
Yeah,
of the season.
so like, it's just I think it's a kind of a reflection of sports betting in general too. There's just so much more information. We'll get into a lot of that. Speaking of the information that is readily available to us, last week we talked about it here on the spread. It's going to be overreaction week. We were going to try not to overreact. I think that's why you and I did well, Andre. I think we did pretty well at avoiding that. In general, a lot of people have bad weeks. Underdogs 11-5 against the spread last week. Underdogs now 18-13-1 on the season. And if you're going to pick a favorite, if you like a favorite to win, you better pick them to cover. I think only 4 favorites who have won their games this year have failed to cover. Right. So far that's been pretty profitable. And on that, let's get into week 3 games. We'll start Sunday afternoon. And all of these games are Sunday afternoon. 2 early ones and a late one.
A lot of good games.
We'll go with the San Francisco 49ers. They are going east-ish. They're going to make a stop in Central America. Middle America.
Taking a roundabout way to get there.
They're playing. It's 49ers and Chiefs from Guatemala. No, this game is at Arrowhead Stadium. This is the Chiefs' home opener, by the way. As impressive as the Chiefs has been so far this season, they've played on each side of the country. They're going home as 6.5-point favorites against the San Francisco 49ers. The total right now set at 56. This is going to be a high-scoring game, at least that's what Vegas thinks. I touched on this in my weekly betting lines report. I said, get that number while you can. It was at 54.5. It's already up to 56. It's going to go even higher. But we're only talking about the spread here. Chiefs 6.5-point favorites. Ricky, where are you at on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting spread, too, because I look back to week 1, and I think the Vikings, they closed at like 6.5 points, I think it was, over the 49ers. So clearly the Chiefs really carving out the narrative of the NFL season so far through 2 weeks. I mean, this spread seems high, but I am gonna roll with the Chiefs to keep it going for at least one more week. I think that the pace that they're on right now is, I mean, I don't think it's sustainable. You look at 26% of Patrick Mahomes' completions thus far, and 18% of his attempts have resulted in touchdowns. So they're just kind of finding the end zone at will. I think they'll slow down at some point. Yeah. I mean, you look at their upcoming schedule after this week: Monday night at Denver, then versus the Jaguars, then on Sunday night at New England. So this is kind of a tune-up, I still look at it as, for the Chiefs, and I think they do cover because I think, like you said, it probably will be a shootout. Maybe it feels close throughout much of the game, but then you look up at the end and they end up winning by a couple touchdowns. So I'll take them 6.5 points, but I'll roll with the Chiefs again on this one.
I'm going to also go with the Chiefs, 6.5-point favorites. I'm going to look at the battle of the trenches in this one.
Yeah.
The 49ers don't do a good job of protecting Jimmy Garoppolo. He's been sacked 9 times already this season. 13% of the dropbacks for Garoppolo ends up in a sack. And do you guys buy into Mahomes? I mean, have you seen him release the ball? The way the ball comes out of his hand is scary.
It's got a rocket.
It's just a missile of an arm. 6 red zone appearances, 6 touchdowns for the Chiefs.
That's a lot of fun.
And when you look at the opponents they've done it against, the Chargers and the Steelers, 2 AFC contenders, 7.5 yards per play against them. And listen, I talked about the battle of the trenches. Chiefs haven't had many sacks in the first 2 games of the season, but again, they've had to go up against the Chargers offensive line, Steelers offensive line. Both of them historically have done a good job of protecting their quarterbacks. Not the case this week in Kansas City, loud stadium, Garoppolo in a crazy environment. I think that this is going to be a wild blowout.
Their offense isn't letting the defense rest much because they're scoring so quickly.
Yeah,
their longest scoring drive last week was 3 minutes and 57 seconds. It's nuts.
I'm not totally sold on Mahomes yet to answer your question, just because I think you got it. It's almost like when a guy comes up in baseball and you need to see him through the league a couple of times till they start getting tape on him. But that being said, you can't deny how good he's been. I think that's going to continue this week. I'm also going to take the Chiefs here. 84% of the bets right now, according to Sports Insights, are on the Chiefs. So you're going to make it 100% in this room.
Not always the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just, I look at the San Francisco defense. There's been some issues there in the secondary, and they've really struggled with tackling. Other than Richard Sherman, who's actually been pretty good for them. Their linebackers have struggled with tackling. Some of the secondary, according to Pro Football Focus, they've missed 26 tackles through 2 games. That's not a good recipe for a team that feasts on bad defenses and wants to be looking for big plays. So, I mean, even if it's not those big plays over the top, I think Kansas City still breaks something, whether it's on like a jet sweep and a couple missed tackles here or there, something underneath, and there's big play potential there all game for them. 6.5, Ricky, you talk about being a lot, but it's just, I don't know. I feel too good about this one probably because, maybe that half point really makes a difference for me. I think 49ers will get theirs, but I'm with you and Ricky with it. I think this kind of a pull away to late game for the Chiefs here.
Yeah, like even if the Niners don't even get within like 7 points or something throughout this entire game, like it'll feel closer than it really is. I feel like.
Yep.
I mean, this might be the Kareem Hunt breakout game too, because he's been, for as good as they've been offensively, he hasn't really had that huge game through the first 2 weeks. So.
I think it's the Justin Houston breakout game against that offense.
Well, this is an opportunity for that defense to kind of get in gear because they've been pretty awful so far.
And tough opponents, Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger. But also another thing, Garoppolo, very mistake prone. This is the time the Chiefs. Your defense is the time it needs to step up at home against a young quarterback in a raucous environment.
The mere fact that they're traveling across the country too. I mean, they're not.
Well, they're going to Central America.
Yeah, once they get past Central America.
First NFL game in Costa Rica.
So the 1 o'clock kickoff, that could play a factor.
Ricky, to your point with the Kareem Hunt, and to my point as well, I think there was 10 missed tackles on Dalvin Cook in Week 1 for San Francisco. I think Kareem Hunt, similar potential for an impact to be made there.
49ers also 3 touchdowns on 9 trips in the red zone this season, so can't leave points on the field.
Great, that's a good point. All right. Also in the 1 o'clock window, let's go to the NFC South. A lot of people like to make the joke that it feels like the Cowboys and the Giants are always playing. I feel like
the NFC South.
The Saints and the Falcons are always playing.
I don't know about you guys, but it's a pain in the ass to pick these.
It is.
And they are very hard.
I stare at my computer screen, not even looking at anything in particular, for like 15 minutes.
If we go back and look at our numbers for like the NFC South over the last 3 years, it's probably
I feel like we're always talking about them too.
Yeah, we are. There's some.
I was going to say,
they play competitive games.
Did very well in our overall picks on NESN.com, but I feel like on the spread when we pick the 3 best games, I don't think we do very well.
I know. I've actually been really good with my locks and upsets this year, but all those other games are terrible.
I was going to say I would look back at my locks historically over like the 3 seasons that we've done them. Because I feel like the lock is where you lose me.
Well, that's one of those things where it's, the better you feel about the pick, probably the worse it is. And we're trying to find the ones that we feel good about.
Well, and it's funny that we mentioned the locks because I've picked the Saints both weeks so far. So you might want to disregard everything I say about this game.
The Saints are, and that's the thing. The Saints have looked bad so far through
Full
2 weeks.
disclaimer.
Now they're going out on the road for the first time this year to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Falcons 3-point favorites, total set at 53 at this one. 60% of the bets as it stands right now coming in on the Falcons. Andre, where are you on this one?
They stared at the screen for a very long time on this, but I think Mark Ingram's absence has really hurt the Saints.
Well, and I saw, not to interject, but
Pretty underrated.
I've talked about Sharp football a lot, in the last few years. He was kind of talking about it. Warren Sharp was talking about how you put Alvin Kamara in a position where he's got to run the ball on early downs, and it's just not as effective. And that's, I think that's undeniable at this point, right?
Yeah, and they're averaging fewer than 3 yards per carry, and this makes Drew Brees more one-dimensional. And that kind of reminds me of the old Saints, when Brees was, obviously he's a great quarterback, but when he has to throw the ball that many times, it's just, it doesn't work as well as it did last year when they had a great running game going with Ingram and Kamara, and Brees didn't have to throw the ball as much. And
the timing's not there either. It doesn't feel in sync.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Deep throws too. Yeah,
he'll be back, but he's not going to be there. And also, you look at the Saints; their defense struggled against Fitzpatrick and Taylor. I mean, Matt Ryan, he has all those threats. He should have a field day at home. And the Falcons' defense, again, they're one of the most underrated defensive teams. I think they're going to. Breeze will get his, but I think Falcons at home, they'll be able to.
So you're taking the Falcons?
Yeah, -3.
Ricky, who you got?
I'm gonna take the Saints for the third week in a row, in the hopes that they finally figure it out and start firing on all cylinders. Now, I say that as someone who liked what I saw from the Falcons offense last week. I mean, more balanced.
Going home helps.
It's second most total yards I think they've had under Steve Sarkisian, who kind of just gotten to the point where I just think that maybe he's just not a very good coordinator for this team. But I think that the Saints can move the ball, and then I still look at the Falcons' injuries on defense and Keanu Neal, especially Deion Jones. I mean, Deion Jones' replacement, Duke Riley, last week had a world of issues trying to defend the Panthers in pass coverage. Christian McCaffrey went off. I kind of thought that was going to be the blueprint for a win for Carolina, was to just feed Christian McCaffrey, get the ball to him in space. I mean, he had 14 catches, over 100 yards. I think if you're the Saints, you try to do the same thing with Alvin Kamara. I think that those two guys, both obviously similar in the sense that they can catch the ball in the backfield and break some big plays. So I don't know. I expect New Orleans to break a few in this one against the Falcons defense, which at some point I just feel like those injuries are going to catch up to him. And not to mention Devontae Freeman likely out again this week, so that didn't really impact him offensively against Carolina, but that's another one where I'm just kind of waiting for it to catch up.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm also on the Saints here for pretty much the exact same reasons Ricky mentioned. I thought that the McCaffrey thing really stood out to me. 14 of 15 targets for 102 yards.
That's a lot of volume.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where New Orleans hasn't been able to run the ball very well, as Andre mentioned, but maybe that's a way they get around it. And I do think, you talk about the Atlanta defense, Andre. It's a good defense, but when you take away Neal and Jones, how good is that?
5.2 yards allowed per play against Eagles and Carolina.
So I think
Carolina can.
Well, my thing is, that's about as bad as the Carolina front seven can play. I mean, they were. I mean, that's really their strength. Their secondary is not that great. Right. Like New Orleans, the secondary is head and shoulders above Carolina's, in my opinion. So maybe that's you kind of win this game on the back end.
They haven't been this year though.
No, because last week they gave up that one deep touchdown to the Browns.
But then they gave also 48 points up to the Tampa Bay Bucks.
No, but I think they fixed things week to week. Tampa Bay maybe is better than we realized. One thing, RJ Bell, noted sports betting expert, whatever you want to call him. Some people have higher opinions than others. He did point this out. The Saints, since 2014, in the first 2 weeks of the season, 1-9, straight up and against the spread. We are no longer in weeks 1 and 2. We're in week 3 now. Yeah. So the Saints are about to turn it on. In the last 4 games between these two teams in Atlanta have been decided by a combined 15 points. That's something to keep in. Interesting. They play close games there. I don't know.
Well, home team has won the last 3 meetings between these two teams.
Yeah, fine. I don't care if they win. They're just going to cover.
That's true.
What do I got for trends here? Anything?
No.
No, nothing.
All right. Sunday afternoon.
Oh, what a
late
game.
Sunday afternoon. Well, early late. This is a 4:05 game.
This is
Los
right in
Angeles.
Andre's wheelhouse.
Yeah, this is not.
You've been waiting. He's been talking about this game since the schedule came out.
Well, that's one of those things where I was complaining about it a couple weeks ago. I'm
Chargers,
sick of
right.
talking about the Chargers and the Rams.
Here
And
they
now
are
the
playing
Chargers
each
and
other.
Rams are playing in a game that absolutely no one will attend. If teams with two horrible fan bases play, does anyone hear it or something like that? The
This is
Chargers.
like a London game. It's gonna be
They
more like
should-
random
they should-
jerseys.
They should have just told these guys.
This should have been a London.
This should be in
Tell
Central,
LA to
Central
go
America.
screw. Yeah, seriously, Mexico.
The Latin
Put 'em in
American
Mexico.
game.
Chargers at Rams. Rams 6.5-point favorites. The Rams have looked like world beaters so far this season, but they have played nobody. They struggled with the Raiders early on before winning that one going away, and they absolutely curb stomped the Cardinals last weekend. Whereas the Chargers, that Week 1 loss, a tough one against Kansas City, went on the road last week and took care of business in Buffalo, which is not saying much. So I'm not really sure what we have out of either of these teams, but like I said, 6.5 points is where it's at right now. Might be a little fluctuation by game time. Ricky, where are you at?
That just seems like a lot of points for the reason that you mentioned. This is the peak value I get for the Rams. This is the highest.
Yeah.
You can't get much. They've been world beaters.
The
to
Rams,
steal your phrase.
if I'm not mistaken, are now the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. They
Oh
have
yeah,
ascended
by
to
a
the-
pretty wide margin, it seems like. And I mean, outscoring their opponents 57-0 over the last 6 quarters. I mean, that game against the Cardinals, 5 first downs. Arizona had 137 yards in total offense,
They're so
which
bad.
I think is just sure it was a nice defensive performance. Don't get me wrong, but again, like you said, consider the competition there. Ramps up this week, and the Chargers are a team that I love when I'm getting points, especially if I'm getting about a touchdown with them. I mean, this dates back really a couple of seasons now. 16-4 against the spread in the last 20 games as underdogs of 6.5 points or more. This is just a team that, I mean, for all their losses last year, it always seemed like it was coming down to the field goal. I mean, it's kind of they're notorious for choking in the end at this point. So I just want them to cover. That's all they got to do. And I would feel a lot better if Joey Bosa would get on the field. I want to see what that defense is fully capable of. But rookie safety Derwin James already looks like he's going to be one of the better safeties.
He's
in the
defensive rookie of the year so far.
So
Easily.
he's been an absolute stud. They got some weapons on offense too. A lot of guys they can spread the ball around to. So I think they keep up. Maybe this turns into a little bit of a shootout. In which case, I mean, I think they'll keep it within reason.
I think this game just spells classic Phillip Rivers heartbreak in the end, and that means it's going to be close.
So they'll
game.
cover.
This is kind of
So
like the
they'll- yeah, so they
opposite
cover.
of kind of like the opposite of the Chiefs 49ers game, where it's like, we're saying like the Chiefs are gonna, it'll be a close game before the
Right.
Chiefs pull away. This one will be close, even with the Chargers leading, and then as Andre is about to get to, Phillip Rivers vomiting.
Strip
Yeah,
sack at the
and
end.
I don't think
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers will
Interception.
vomit. I just think something bad will happen.
A tipped pass interception or something like that.
Yeah, I had this great stats.
Yeah, like they're driving down 4, and it's just
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna take Chargers. I don't know who's gonna win this game,
yeah.
but if you're giving me 6.5
Good
points,
insight right
Chargers,
there.
no, I honestly don't know who will win this game. I think it's gonna be one of the greatest games of the 2018
I
season.
think it's in the 20s.
2018 season. But if
Of
you're
the
giving me
century.
6.5 points to a guy like Phillip Rivers, who the only time the Chargers, the last time the Chargers didn't. Sorry, how am I saying this? The Chargers
Take a breath.
games. The last time the Chargers lost by more than 1 score to a team not named the Kansas City Chiefs was December 11, 2016. It's a long time ago. The only team that beats them by more than a score are the Chiefs. It's a bad matchup. We saw it happen in Week 1. They're going to keep it close against
Even
the Rams.
then, they still
And they came back, yeah. So again, both of these teams, I think they're Super Bowl contenders. You look at their yards per play differential in the first 2 weeks. It's, 2 of the top 3 are the Rams and the Chargers. Again, Melvin Gordon, more receiving yards than rushing yards this year. That's interesting fact. And they've been doing it against tough competition. The Chiefs in Week 1, they were able to come back and whatnot. Obviously, they played the Bills, who were trash.
So just maybe not that tough.
Yeah, but when you look at the Rams competition the first 2 weeks,
I know.
at least the Chargers had a challenge, whereas the Rams have just walked through garbage opponents. This will be their biggest test. And I think, you look at Jared Goff. Gurley's banged up. Todd Gurley's banged up. Greg Zuerlein
God,
It's banged up.
that was like the only point I had left. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
go
that's
ahead.
I'm
Finish
like,
my point.
I'm surprised. All three of us are on the Chargers here because I too am on the Chargers. The Zerline thing was kind of a throwaway, but that's one of those things where
you saw it in week 2, all the kickers.
Right. You're driving down the field up 6, trying to make it 9, and you miss the field goal, and all of a sudden you're in the number. I think kickers have a sneaky effect on the spread in terms of, maybe it doesn't cost a team a game necessarily like we saw in week 2, but maybe it goes against
it could
the
happen
spread.
early too.
Right,
you know
that
what I mean?
too.
A missed field goal in the first quarter could come back to
a missed extra point in a 6.5 point game
Right.
goes down to 6 as opposed to 7. You're under the number. I like a lot of what you guys said. Ricky, kind of to your point about the against the spread stuff. Phillip Rivers for his career 13-5 against the spread as an underdog of 6.5 or more. 24-10 against the spread as a road underdog of 3.5 and more. So I like those numbers. Not a lot to go on right here. And you talk about Melvin Gordon. He hasn't been great in the running game, but he's been very effective in the passing game with 15 catches for 140 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. Oakland, you go back to week 1, had some success against the Rams with Jalen Richard coming out of the backfield. So maybe they kind of try to go with that to make up for the lack of running game. And Phillip Rivers, I thought the stat was interesting. This is from Pro Football Focus. He was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks last week. Still had a league-leading 153.7 passer rating under pressure, 8 of 9 for 108 yards and a touchdown under duress. Won't be as easy this week. That secondary that the Rams have built is really good. But just something to keep in mind. I think they keep.
I don't think anybody's going to retire at halftime.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless they keep Talib.
Yeah, I imagine most of those.
Rides up
in hindsight, that ball where
and again, if any team is going to have somebody that retires at halftime, it might be the Chiefs. I mean, the Rams.
That's true.
They get some characters on that defense.
I mean, Aqib Talib, I think, is a great candidate.
That's a good point, though. A lot of those numbers probably came in that one play where Vontae Davis was beat deep and then missed 3 tackles on the same play. So maybe that number's not as good. Whatever. We're all in the Chargers. It's kind of surprising, but that should
it's just a big number.
Should be a good game. Yeah.
I'm very interested to see where that goes by
71% of the bets right now on the Rams. So that number might even go up a little bit.
People don't care about the Chargers. They don't know how good they are.
Well, it's one of those things too. You look at what was the score of the game last week? 34-0. They beat the Cardinals.
The Cardinals.
Yeah, so you just look at it and you're just like, that's the last thing you remember. So people are like, well, this team's loaded.
Yeah.
Which they are, but
they are. But this is going to be a classic.
It's a good matchup.
That nobody will be there.
I think it's really a reflection of
will
just the Chargers being kind of below expectations to this point to an extent, and the Rams performing beyond their expectations.
I also think
so it's going to be a big number. I just think these two teams are closer than 7 points.
Yeah, and I think week 1 hurt the Chargers, just losing to the Chiefs, and they made it close to the end, but at one point they're getting blown out.
Too where
it's easy to discredit their win last week because, like you said, Bills are such trash.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're only 2 weeks in, but there's not a lot of shame through 2 weeks and losing to the Chiefs.
No, exactly.
How good they have.
That's I agree 100%.
All right, locks. Andre, what's your lock?
I'm going to go with another very underappreciated team right now, the Miami Dolphins. I think Ryan Tannehill is quietly putting together, like I said this last week, no one's talking about him. He came back from a very serious injury. All he's done is complete 73 of his passes, averaged nearly 8 yards per pass attempt. He has a ton of weapons. I love Kenyon Drake. Speaking of Kenyon Drake, Raiders have allowed 5.7 yards per carry this season. So I'm expecting a lot of Kenyon Drake. And also, Oakland. This is the John Gruden factor. They have these big leads at halftime. Or not big leads. They have leads at halftime, and in the second half, they don't do anything.
I was going to say, the play might be you get on the Raiders' first half number and then fade them as the game goes on live betting.
I think they're not good at making second half adjustments. I think that's all coaching. That's on John Gruden. They haven't been able to close out games, and they have a lead. They were beating the Rams.
Yeah. Good first half team, not a great second half team. Games passed them by. Ricky.
Speaking of coaching, I'm going to take the Patriots as my lock. 7-point favorites over the Lions because I think Bill Belichick's just going to coach the pants off one of his former assistants, Matt Patricia. I mean, we don't really need to get into too much what the Patriots typically do after a loss. I mean, they bounce back better than any team in the NFL. I mean, the losses are rare as it is. Since the beginning of the 2016 season, 5-0 against the spread following a loss. 7-3 against the spread in the last 10 appearances on Sunday Night Football, for whatever that's worth. Lions could have a couple guys out. Don't know what Darius Slay's status is. Ziggy Ansah's banged up as well. So I just think this is one of those get-right games for the Patriots. We'll see what Josh Gordon has up his sleeve, how much he plays. But regardless, I think they bounce back this week.
Hopefully it's not a doobie.
Oh.
I'm going to take the Packers in my lock, 3-point favorites over the Redskins. I don't know. Green Bay, first road game, but you look at starting the year against, even at home, starting the year against Chicago and Minnesota, those defenses with, I thought Aaron Rodgers played pretty well last week. Obviously, this game they should have won with the penalties. If Kevin King is okay, and I'm not sure he is, but he's been when he's healthy, he's one of the better defensive players, young defensive players in the league. Really helps that secondary especially against a Redskins team that doesn't have a ton of weapons. Packers, good tackling team, good against the run. I'd like to see them getting a 3 tight end set a little bit more. Mercedes Lewis, get that run game going. I just think that's a good matchup for the Packers there. So I like the Packers, 3-point favorites on the road in DC.
What do you think of ties?
Yeah,
in general.
See, I don't like them. I don't really have a whole lot of issue with the overtime rules either. Let's go back to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather watch two teams hump a doorknob for 15 minutes than end a game in a tie.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I'm at the point now where I'm so over people complaining about the ties.
I know. But we have an influx of ties. Like there clearly has been an increase in ties the last couple seasons.
I just wish teams would figure it out in the allotted time. Like let's do it.
If we
have to go right to the doorknob humping, let's just do that after regulation. As long as you get a winner here, let's just do it.
No doorknob foreplay.
Wow, this is really
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the college rules in the NFL. I don't think that's a good idea.
I would never want to see something like that.
Maybe start from the 50-yard line.
Yeah, maybe make your goddamn kicks too.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, but I wouldn't mind going to 15.
You think Zane Gonzalez gets a job again?
No.
Think we see another tie this year?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see one this week.
I don't like ties.
One a week.
Does anybody think ties are good for the NFL?
I really wanted that Browns Saints game to go over there and see the Browns turn 0-2.
Yeah,
that would
be
be
cool.
amazing.
But it doesn't. There's no real tangible benefit to a tie, right?
One part that I can't figure out whether I like or don't like is the fact that it really screws with the standings.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's like it's more difficult to figure out, but at the same time, I love a sense of chaos at the end of the season.
Well, it's going to be even. Well, no, I guess.
I love when things get all jumbled.
The Packers Vikings.
But like that, at least those are the two teams. So that's just like a wash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's weird if you get two teams that aren't in the same division and they both have ties, because then you're dealing with like a playoff.
It will definitely impact the NFC South then.
Why?
Who did Browns tie? Oh, I thought the Browns tied the season.
Exactly. No, it's the that one's a wash.
It's all division.
Right. Yeah.
But if the Browns and Saints had tied.
Right. Then you got like this weird thing where it's like maybe the Saints are 9-6-1 and they don't get it because somebody.
It'll still impact the wild card standings.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Things could get weird.
They'll get weird regardless.
It could be tiebreakers with ties and stuff. Oh God. All right, let's do upsets. Ricky.
My head's spinning. I'm gonna take the Broncos, 5-point underdogs over the Ravens.
Oh, I love that.
No C.J. Mosley, it sounds like. He might be the Ravens' most irreplaceable defensive player. I just think that Broncos pass rush, pretty legit, and be able to get after it against that Ravens offensive line that was exposed a little bit last week in Cincinnati. I don't love the Broncos going on the road, and there's a lot of trends that
Broncos team has not looked good either.
They haven't looked good. It's a very unimpressive 2-0.
Yeah.
I mean, they're finding a way to do it. And like I said, there's a lot of trends that point to not picking the Broncos on the road, so that does scare me a little bit. But like I said, the Mosley thing, I think is just, I don't think you can say enough about that. And I think just the Ravens in general, a tough team for me to buy into.
Sure.
I don't know.
I kind of bought into them against the Bengals, and I fell flat on my face. I do like John Brown though. I think he's great for Joe Flacco. He's having a big year.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm surprised they haven't been able to put more guys like that around him more frequently. You saw it with Steve Smith, and Steve Smith's prime toward the end of his career, but
they've always had some weird targets.
Yeah,
that more like deep threats, like Torrey Smith,
what Flacco needs.
Mike Wallace, guys that Hey, you're right. I think he needs more of some safety valves, like a John Brown in the slot, something like that.
Right. Oh, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna keep riding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hype. Go with them over the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2-point underdogs. I mean, Fitzpatrick, everyone's been talking about it, so I'm not going to, what's the old saying, beat a dead horse? I don't know.
That is the old saying.
Is that the old saying? Yeah. I mean, all of his touchdown passes, but here's one thing that...
Grounded and pounding horse.
Wait, is that what it's not?
No, that's what it is. Great saying,
though. Fitzpatrick, no one's talking about this. All of his touchdown passes are like 50 yards or more. Just deep missiles. And I just look at the Steelers right now. Like, they're just Antonio Brown's asking for a trade. Le'Veon Bell is probably not. He's not probably going to come back. I don't know what's going on with them. Roethlisberger is throwing the ball 60 times a game again.
This is a chaotic.
When I looked at the box score and I saw Roethlisberger 60 pass attempts, I'm like, oh.
He threw
That's
the
not
ball
good.
35 times in the first half.
Ugh, that's not good. That's not a recipe for success. And
The safety's throwing fake punt touchdowns like the Titans game. It's wacky. It's a wacky first couple weeks.
Yeah, and we're really seeing the impact of Shazier's absence on the Steelers.
I was actually going to mention that the Spread Investor Twitter account, remember Team OddsShark, they are 1-7 against the spread without Ryan Shazier since hometown.
It's unreal how one guy can just impact the defense. And they gave up a ton of points to the Chiefs. They weren't really amazing against the Browns. They tied them. So it's just
That's one of those things where it's always so weird because it's like such a serious injury, and it's like when do you get to the point where it's okay to talk about it from a football standpoint? You still feel a little weird, like. Obviously, you just want this guy to be like having.
Oh, so the 1-7 against the spread, but who cares? Because he can't even walk.
But you got to get to a point where it's like, you got to address it from a personnel standpoint.
If the Steelers go like 9-7, 8-8, does Mike Tomlin keep his job? What is it with the AFC North and teams just keeping their coaches? Hugh Jackson still has a job, and Marvin Lewis still has a job.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I'd like to see what the odds were on him being the first coach fired.
You know who
that would have been a sneaky good.
You know who I wish we got in on first coach fired is Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
We talk about a team that's kind of a mess right now. Houston. He was 21 to start the year. That would have been a nice little.
What's your upset?
My upset's
I thought you were segueing here.
I like talking about stupid stuff. I'll take the Bengals. They're 3-point dogs on the road against Carolina. 10 days to recover from the Thursday night game. Carolina's got its own played on the road in a divisional game last week.
10 days to recover. Remember Ben Roethlisberger? He said, AFC North football. It's AFC North football.
Exactly.
You need 10 days to recover from AFC North football.
Joe Mixon not playing, kind of concerning, but Carolina or Atlanta had success last week spreading it around. 4 different receivers last week with at least 4 catches. I think Cincinnati's got, like I've been saying all along, they've got a pretty decent arsenal of weapons. Spread it around, pretty good defense, find a way to win against Carolina, who I'm not sold on. So,
AFC North.
What a loser.
I mean, usually that's what the AFC football is. AFC North football. It's very.
Ben Roethlisberger's got some bigger issues to worry about right now, by the looks of it on Twitter. There might be some Stormy Daniels stuff coming out the next few days by the sounds of it. Who knows?
Who's the best team in the North, you think?
Bengals.
Still the Steelers? You think
Browns should be a 2-0 team if Zane Gonzalez made his kicks.
I think the Bengals. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Steelers will figure it out.
You can make a case for.
We could be talking a lot of AFC North later in the season.
I think AFC North will be.
Like, who's going to win this 17-13 game?
And that'll be the type of matchup that'll be staring at my computer screen for 15 minutes.
A lot of
the AFC North is the new NFC South.
The thing is, they still have Juju Smith-Schuster. They need to use him more.
He had like 150 catches last week, didn't he?
Yeah.
15, 13.
Antonio Brown, not happy about that. All right, let's get out of here. That's been the Spread, NESN.com Football Picks podcast. We'll be back again next week to do the same exact
Trade
thing.
me, see what happens.
See ya.
AFC North football. Very quotable people on the Steelers.
See you later.